Wide out. Hey, check that bump, check that glute. Wide out. Hey.
Good
Oh, like that.
good evening, and welcome to the Power Hour show, brought to you courtesy of Perfect Balance Clinic. Thank you to Ellie Baker out there, the girl that I've seen do some drills there, 800 meters. Terrific talent and coming on strong. Tonight, we're talking about talent and talent development. Now, there are many themes out there, and there are many principles and many perspectives, regarding what talent is and how we identify talent and how we should develop talent. And, there are many protocols of this talent development, by established, some of the big gunners in track and field have got different models on talent development. Not everyone agrees with everybody else, but that's the nature of the industry. That's the nature of the terrain. However, one thing is certain is that where there's talent, when attention is given unto it in terms of opportunity and support, that tends to come through. Whatever that talent is, however that talent looks like, whatever it is, once it is given opportunity and support, that talent seems to blossom and come to represent itself, what it must look like within its own, within its own field of expression. Tonight, I'm joined by Clarence Curran, that's a great friend of mine. But more than that, it's because he is a man that's been around the block insofar as talent development is concerned. And he's going to share, with us one such perspective, which is playground to podium. That journey that you would think every protocol should want to take an athlete through. You're getting involved with the athlete because you want to take them to whatever podium represents in their journey of development. Clarence, welcome to the show, mate.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
What you been up to, man? It's getting a bit cold now. What's your week been like?
Very cold. I've been hibernating as such. I am more or less planning for the winter to come, and the things have changed. Lots of the dynamics have changed for coaching. Because no longer can we walk onto a track and use the facility, etc. There's got to be a lot more planning and stuff like that going on, and you have to be a lot more aware of where your athletes are, and it's almost that you're monitoring them 95% of the time throughout their time at wherever center you're at or whatever track you're at. So there's a lot more work involved, and we're just really planning for that, really.
Yeah, you echo the sentiments of many a coach, on these shows, which is how to deal with this restricted return to training and the restricted return to competition. What are some of the strategies or things that you have come up since this return to restricted performance started, which is about almost 6-8 weeks? What has evolved in your practice, you and your athletes and your club? What has evolved? What have you come up with, if you may like to share that?
I think that it sort of pushed us back already in time. It's what I would do really when I was an athlete. We spend a lot more time outside of the track limits rather than inside the track limits. So, for this block that we've done during the lockdown and to the end of the season, we've actually spent most of our time on grass and on, harder surfaces and concrete and things like that, trying to get ends meet, and maybe the odd visit to the far off land where there's a track that wasn't being policed by the system. And so you can get some things done, sort of. But the main goal is really that long as you have a vision and you understand all the goals that you're trying to meet, you just change your ethos slightly, and you adapt, as you were saying in my old profession, adapt and overcome. So it's adapting our training styles and our methods and our methodologies to what we have really, and because we have a good experience, Lloyd and I have understanding what we need for our athletes to perform well. We go about it diligently, and hopefully we get the results we're after.
Adaptation. You just mentioned there in your old profession. Could I just, before we delve into all this talent identification, who is Clarence? What have you been involved in? How did you arrive to be where you are at, talking about so candidly and so passionately about coaching? What was your journey like yourself?
Oh, journey. Well, it's actually a journey that I never really thought I would start. I was told that by a young man by the name of Frank Dick that I have a talent for it many years ago, and that I was still competing. And he encouraged me and actually, got me onto the coaching courses. Him, like my coach as well, John Isaacs. And I was very impressed with the way they both managed me and told me what I could achieve and how I can achieve it in coaching, that was. And I pushed on. I really got into it at the last moment by an athlete that I ended up coaching, who actually came to me and said, can I write him some schedules and whatever. And I started writing schedules, and he started to perform, and I started writing schedules, and it just went from one thing. But I also wanted to give back something to the coaching community. After being an athlete, I wanted to give back something, and I believe that my coach John Isaacs is probably one of the most successful coaches of his time, of his era. And what he did to us, he took from myself a 11 dead or 11.2 sprinter and turned him into a 10.2 sprinter, over time. And that is one of the prompts for my playground to Podium, because my playground was more about 16, 17. I was still at school, and this young man came along and he said bang, and everything he said came to pass. And I always wanted to say, well, I wanted to make sense. I mean, how can it be that? Well, not simple, but just how can he do that? How can he do that? How can he just come along and say you can do this? And then I joined the British Army, who then have lots of different types of coaching skills. They coach people to do remarkable things that you wouldn't even think about. And all of a sudden, I've got these two things weighing on one side, and bringing them together has been a journey in itself to bring it together, to get the performances that you want out there on the track. That's why, getting people to really believe in themselves and look up to themselves and actually think, I can believe in myself to do this, to do that, because I think the psychological aspect as well is probably a bigger importance, because you're trying to convince people to do this, to do that, to do this, to do that. Things sometimes that they'll never have heard of, and then you have to convince the youngster, you have to convince the parent, you have to convince the teacher. So you're constantly coaching all these elements all the time to develop this person. And I love that educational journey from the beginning to wherever that athlete might get, wherever that podium is. And to me, I think that you give that educational value.
Yeah, something has gone on there, Clarence. I think
I got totally cut off by something there. Is that you? Can you hear me well now?
Yeah, you're back, mate. You're back. Okay. I can hear you. So, let's go on. Let's hit it.
That educational journey that I think it's so important to athletes. So they pick my brains.
I think we are having a bit of an issue there with Clarence audio. Shall we just yeah, I'll give Clarence a bit of time there to sort out his machine. But basically, it is all clear what Clarence is about and what he is sharing there regarding his own experiences to arrive here as a coach and the interdisciplinary involvement with his track and field experience, and then marrying that with his time within the British Army, where there's a lot, as he points out, lots of coaching that goes on within the military processes in developing, a military professional. And he brings that to the track, and that's what he's using, to work with his athletes. Let me see if I can get Clarence back and have him continue. Clarence, are you all right to fly, mate?
Stan,
one more time.
1 minute, 1 minute, 1 sec.
1 minute, 1 minute. Clarence is asking for. Right, there you go. Technology. These things will always happen. But yeah, the story we're talking about, the subject matter of discussion is talent development. And I said at the top of the show that this looks different, in different sports. It looks different in different countries. It looks different, in different perspectives and paradigms regarding talent development. Where do you start? What is talent? How do we identify it? And do we go the holistic way where, we're taking all metrics, to predict that this child or this athlete is a talented athlete and this one is not? At what time of a child's development is that should be done? Do we wait until they're within their teens or late teens? How about those late bloomers? Where would they fit in such perspectives or in such paradigms? How about those that are late comers, if I may call them that, late entries into a sport? How about those that really were not given the opportunity to become aware of what they can do in that particular sport? And talk about that. How about those that are talented in that particular sport, but that sport in itself is not offered within their locality? So, many questions, and many, so much pondering does go on within the debate of talent identification and the talent development. But one thing is clear. One thing seems to be, fall within the consensus region of all these different arguments, which is everyone has got a talent for something. Everybody has got a talent for something. If only we give them the opportunities to express whatever it is that they have a dominance for, that talent will be able to come through, within that particular sport in which they've got predominant variables for them to perform. They will come through. Given enough support, given enough direction, given enough guidance, that talent should come through. It's almost similarly, like academic talent, if I can use the term, where there's a school and there is a schooling, it's almost natural and socially, it's socially possible that the learner should respond to the stimuli that is being provided them through the educational processes and educational systems. And the limit of their development really is dependent on how much they engage with the struggle, or rather with the stimuli of education that they are receiving. That's how they go. But to be able to decide right at the start, this one is going to be good in maths, these are going to be good in English, these are going to be good in this subject, it might not seem such a viable, or rather a plausible, protocol in an academic sense. And so if you spin that into the sports field, you want to wonder either, that in itself would also put spanners in the works, for us. Let me try and get Clarence back onto the show. Clarence, are you good, mate?
Really apologize. It's a very persistent young man trying to get through to me. But hopefully I've cured that, and you know, we shouldn't have any more interruption. But I don't want to say that because life is such a funny thing at the moment. Technology has its worst sides, I suppose.
That's all right, mate. That's all right. We can. Oh, let's catch up with you know, your wonderful thread there that you were sharing, you know, on
Yeah.
you know, Podium, playground to Podium. Now, before we get there, and I'd like us to get there soon enough, but could you like to share just what your own experiences as an athlete would probably have an input in what you are going to share with us about playground to Podium, you know, talent development?
Well, again, I was saying earlier, it's just making sure that, you know, you touch certain bases throughout this whole time. Now, using myself before, like I was talking about my army background and that educational journey, you know, someone picking you up from 16 years old and taking you through to wherever that future might be. Now, so the things that happen within there, obviously, is people develop at different rates, people do this at different rates, people learn at different rates, and how you then contain those things. Now, my coach, he had the vision. You know, he would say, this is where I got you, and this is where you're going to go. And he then makes sure that he oozed all these elements out to me along that journey. Now, I also find that it was very, very important for me to actually learn this journey and pass it on, because I think it felt it gave a lot more to the athletes. Because once the athletes start with you and you want them to continue along this journey, continue developing, continue achieving all the way through, and it cut out a lot of the bad feelings that we used to have along the way with athletes jumping ship and la la la. So, you know, for me, it was so important that I actually give them the framework and buy their time, because I think for a lot of people, they get bored and they get totally not there, and you know, they see other people probably who are faster developers and moving on quicker than them, and they decide to, almost a type of jealousy steps in, and they say, hey, well, I want to move that speed, where in essence that you're looking and you're training and you're actually trying to iron out a lot of the kinks that you think you might get later on in their development, and especially when you identify certain things that you think that they can and can't do. And I think we, you know, this journey is just so complex and so, you know, for some people upsetting. I'm going to say upsetting because for every time you move on or you don't move on, that is then a psychological barrier that person then has to overcome, and they're looking for fault, and it's almost like a fault or blame. And that's why, you know, I find that, you know, that education, that sitting down and continue talking and getting them to talk back to you, and, you know, always communicating with you along this journey, and communicating, I find now in today's day, with their parents along this journey, then helps to, you know, seal this framework of development. And hence, and a lot of the times you don't get this, you know, boredom and this, I am moving on, or I'm not achieving, and whatever, because, you know, getting these values right from the beginning and saying to them, listen, this is your structure. Because, you know, if I go back slightly, us coaches, we, you know, as I said earlier, we judge a lot. You know, when that person comes into your group, we've already formed an opinion. You know, they're either staccato runners, or they, you know, they create a lot of force, or they don't create a lot of force, or, you know, they're Bambi, we used to say, people who have shaky legs, and, you know, you can see, or what side of the railway tracks do they run, you know, so their legs might be slightly splayed apart. And then you look at the why are these doing these things? So you're almost telling yourself straight away, I know I need to implement these things along this journey, and, you know, and getting them to try other things along that journey as well. So, you know, going back to coach.
Yeah, Clarence, you know, if I sorry if I may stop you in your tracks there. You know, when athletes come to the track for the first time, usually, you know, they come there, they have an opinion of what they are good at. You know, they'll come in and say, I'm good at 100 meters, I'm at 200. Actually, they don't say I'm good at, they'll say, I am a 200-meter runner, you know, I am a 400-meter runner. They come with an event in their mind. and then it's the coach that has to, sort of break that down, because yeah, you look here, you are at 14, 12, 14, 15. You really don't. You might fancy being 100 meters, you fancy being a 400-meter runner, but you really don't know that yet. Do you think coaches also would, coaches, like, from what you have alluded to there, that coaches tend to judge athletes. Do you think coaches are also as guilty as athletes then in trying to predetermine who they are or what the athlete is going to be?
Yeah. And again, exactly. So once they, especially at 13 or 14, they don't know who they are, regardless of what they want to be. And we tend to, we see already what they can be, because we look at the way they run, and we look at the way, they get on with people, what their confidence levels are like. We look at all those small little things and we think, okay, he can do this and she can do that. And I mean, I had, if I want to go on the other side of the coin, I remember this happening in my group. When I was training, my coach, a young man by the name of Tony Jarrett came in one day, and he looked at me, and Tony said, "Oh God, I want to be a sprinter." My coach said, "No, you're not. You're going to be a hurdler." At the end of the day, but he almost preordained, this is what you're going to be, because he said, but there's loads of sprinters, why do you want to be that? But, it doesn't necessarily mean it was right or wrong. What it was that he had a vision for this young man. And like you say, he came in preconceived that I was going to do this and I was going to do that. I think he was 17 or 16 or 17 at the time. So, we are very, very responsible for individuals when they do come in. But we also need to open up that whole, that whole basket of toys that we have there to say, what else can they do and how can they do it? Because I think that sometimes we get stuck in the event for so long, and and we're not going anywhere, where a step to the left or the right could bring in long jump, could bring in lots of other things. I guess that's why a lot of people say in these early days, the multi-eventers tend to benefit a little bit better, because they get all that cross training and lots of different things, and focusing on lots of different areas, and rather than actually us just being very linear and being very so specific so early throughout their development, whether we can actually be a little bit more open and holistic to how they develop in those early stages.
Yeah. I had Shaka Bunsi on the show last week. Shaka is a high jump coach, and he aired almost a similar sentiments, because when he was an athlete and he was at the pinnacle of his game, his coach, but then he also was involved with acting. Away from the track, he was in the acting school, but he says he recalls that he was told by his coach that you must decide what you want to be. Do you want to be an athlete, or do you want to be a coach? Rather, do you want to be an actor? And he says, Shaka says, now with hindsight, he now tells his athletes, do you want to be this and this, instead of do you want to do this or that, the other? As you can't start determining, giving athletes such determinant situations where they must judge or to do one event or the other. What's your view on that?
I mean, I think I already know this young man, because at the end of the day, this is what my coach said to me. I remember I like cricket. I'm my family's from a cricketing background, and I was on the other side, and he said to me like, "Hey, hang on a minute, no. There has to be a choice here." And he very, very firmly put his foot down on that, and obviously because the other sports involved, football and all that sort of thing, but it's not that he wanted us to specialize so early. He just wanted us to actually find the focus and stick to it, rather than it was like you're using something to just break this thing down, and rather than actually saying, I need your mind fully concentrating on what you're doing. And for us in those days, because as we would say, we were very scatty, and we didn't actually try to spend as much attention or focus to it. I remember thinking that, coming up around my 17th birthday, 18th birthday, I thought, oh, this could be really okay. Rather than actually saying, this is what I wanted to do from day one. I had an ambition, I had an ambition to actually wasn't so much to win an Olympic medal. After seeing it for the first time in the 70s, I think it was 76 for the first thing I really watched that well. I said to myself, I would love to go there. I didn't actually say I wanted to go there and win something, I guess, which probably was my downfall. I just said I wanted to go there, and you know, and to be part of that. So you could say that sometimes the goalpost was a bit lower. I should have said I want to go win a medal, like a lot of people do. But in essence, at that stage in my development, I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea what it meant to go from one stage to the next stage to the next stage to then achieve this goal, and the magnitude of actually going to a major championships. So I sort of my coach, he was the one that was very influential in that. Again, he would say, I might not get you to run but I can get you to do this, and you could make the relay team, and you could get a medal. That's what he would say. And again, he sectioned it out, and he almost decided for me along the way what I was going to
do. Yeah. Listen, Clarence, I'm going to give you a water break, mate. But when we come back, I'd like you to share with us if what this playground to podium, pathway looks like, in a way of structure, if you can, unpin that for us. What are the key places, key milestones within that journey, for coaches and associations or clubs looking to develop talent through, the playground to podium pathway? When we come back, Clarence, let's hear your thoughts on that one. Welcome back. We're talking talent development and the one of the many pathways that are out there, that are both successful and others not so successful as pathways. And the one we're talking about is playground to podium, which I think in essence is a very long-term athlete development. So I think it falls within that category. Clarence, before the break, I suggested you might want to share with us any key milestones or key pegs within that journey. What would that look like, from your own experience?
From my own experience, going back to a lot of the athletes I have in those times, for me, it's all about movement. That's my underpinning thing for everything, movement patterns. And to me, it's the easiest type of plyometric that anyone can do to develop strength. And that's just to run, jump, hop, skip, brace. All the fundamental movement things are all built into that. And what my coach used to always say to us, the first prerequisite of running is to run. So once I get the kids in, this is not to do actually quite with sprinting yet. This is to see how they move, how they walk. Do their feet turn in? Do they turn out? All the little things that you would notice. What they're like as far as different stretches. If I give them a lunge, what would that do? If I give them a press up, what would that do? Especially in the female generation at that very young age, those things are not there yet. Those things are the things that we develop along the way. But I also like to have a very good group atmosphere as well. So, and have the little bit older ones just there that they're looking at, because they're very good copiers, kids. They copy things, and my job is to make sure they copy it correctly. So once they're looking and seeing where the next level is, because I think we were a little bit higher at the chains. If we started about from 17 or 18, and my coach always used to say, look at McFarland. That's where you need to be going. but that doesn't necessarily mean I run like him or I look like. He was giving me a vision of where the next level is, and and he would always be, as I'm looking at McFarlane, he's looking at me, correcting, saying this is how he does this, but your patterns are this way. So then he had a way of actually saying, well, you need to develop your strength, and you need to develop your strength in your movement. So we would start with a 150 maybe, and then we will go up to a 200 maybe, and he would just keep monitoring it. And the more we ran it, the more we got better at it. So, we would then do a lot more circuit work. Circuit work was the lifeblood, but what he would do, we would actually do basketball. Things that people don't do. We would play basketball for a warm-up. We would do 20, 30 minutes of basketball for a warm-up. And again, plyometrics involved, really good conditioning aerobic. You do one-on-one and run a half a basketball court. You know what I'm talking about. It really, really, really is so he was, tricking the system. He's actually getting us to do things and making us stronger. And we didn't understand. So again, for me, that whole philosophy there is getting people to do things that really was hitting targets and goals that you wanted them to hit along the journey, and they're not knowing it was disguised. So and he was always into that type of thing. He would make us do things just run around the block, for instance. He would make us run a mile just to see what type of fitness conditioning we have. He'd say, oh, just go and jog, just jog. Is this what you like? So when you come back. And then, we wouldn't do that consistently all the time, but just to give him an idea of what it was he was actually trying to do. Again, and before he categorized us as well, because, a lot of people, they come and, they say, like you said earlier, they want to come as a 100-meter runner. And he would say, oh, well, let's see, maybe I don't know. And he would then train as you got better and better, and certain qualities come up. Then he might say, oh, gosh, things that you're doing looking more like you could run a 400 or whatever. So, developing those movement skills for us was really, really important. But that then stems back to the coach himself has to have a very strong idea of the technical model that he thinks he's going to implement. Because you can run movement patterns and you can run technical things in longer distances. It doesn't have to be fast. Yeah. But you can make certain movements, and younger kids, they tend to run and cross their bodies, or they run as obviously they're falling over. You can correct simple things like that, tell them to stand up right. Whatever is the model that you're trying to teach. And I think the hardest thing with that thing is actually individualizing the technical model to individual athletes, because they're going to do it differently. There's no such thing as someone is going to do front side mechanics the same as the next person. They will never do that. No. So knowing that pattern that you're looking for and saying, well, this is my understanding of how front side or back side, whatever it is you're going to use, is going to work. And this is how I will implement it on this person. If then you're looking at someone who's got a weakness that might not be able to hit these goals, then you start fixing that weakness, because you know specifically what you're targeting. And we would just piece it together like that. And because for us, our system is that we worked very hard in the speed endurance area. And I mean, very, very hard along that journey to Podium. So, because we believe that when you start off very hard with youngsters on speed stuff, they're pulled for almost immediately all the time. They just cannot do that all the time. So how you break it down to get them to be able to do that is more important. So that journey, again, is, people, I mean, in today's day, there's a lot more to do with conditioning and actually getting people ready to run fast. But like I said earlier, the prerequisite of running fast is to run fast. Because it's almost, if you stay away from it, if you come back to it in the wrong way, the same thing happens again. Yeah. So if I'm understanding, I'm under the understanding that the more you run, the more of a plyometry you're doing. If I'm creating 2 to 3 times my body weight in force in a jogging movement, What do I create in a striding movement? What do I create in a, a 60% movements, and so on and so on. So all the time, I'm always building strength from day one. It's using it in a way that you think, well, okay, I know I need to do this, and I know I need to do this. The drills that people will do, let's say for other things, for instance, like if you're doing a drill for a block star, or if you're doing a drill, for arm actions and things like that, the more specific things to those things, those things can be done in walking time and a bit slower, because I believe that youngsters, like I said back earlier, they copy. And when you have the group going along, and it's like when everybody started doing the drag, everybody putting their feet dragging. And I go to a school and teach, and he's dragging his foot, and I'm thinking, what's that about? And they had no idea why they were dragging their foot. They can hardly hold a dry face, but yet he can. They're dragging their feet. So it's just setting the right plans in the right place, and that continual motion of movement, just watching people move and watching people move and watching people move. And I remember was on a class with Dan Paff once, and he said that he must have watched about 20 or 30,000 videos of people moving just to develop a pattern that he was happy with. And again, one of the other key points that we used to always have is repetition is the mother of learning. The more you do something, the more you tend to repeat it, and the more you tend to get better at it. The idea is then we have to get the athlete strong enough for them to be able to keep making that repeat cycle all the time. And then once we get more specific down the other end, we have a strength base to actually get specific with. So that covers for me a lot of the things, and mobility, stability, because in all that jogging system that we're doing, and that slower running system, you want to call it, you look at what they're like. So are they ones that are going to get a longer stride length, or are they getting shorter stride length? Are they getting longer stride length because they're plantar flexing too much? The old days in the 400-meter running, where they used to tell you to have a high back lift and swing out far, so you get stride length. So you're coming from high to low in that movement process. And you're weeding out all those things in those short little times, because you will see. Because sometimes I think there's almost too much of an overemphasis of people using blocks too soon for people who ain't got the strength to do so. And and the thing about that is it's such a speed of it. People can pick it up very, very quickly, because that's what they want to do. You don't have to convince kids to do blocks. They want to get into a pair of blocks and run, period. So again, going back to the same thing, building up that rhythm of movement. Well, for me, fast running is about not so much that, I know the guidelines are like you have to go from 0 to 75% of your max velocity within 3 or 4 strides. But I would like to think is that you want to go from 0 to a good rhythm of movement to develop that acceleration profile to max velocity. I remember reading someone saying that the difference between the acceleration and the max velocity must be 0. There mustn't be any, differentiation in that transition through that movement pattern, because that's all time loss. Another way of saying it is that, that time loss is, any deviation from speed or speed momentum is lost, speed loss. So you want to, dial out the speed loss and get them to develop good rhythm patterns early, again, does that. And, for me, I think that's why more or less I'm along the plyometric side of things, because the plyometric side of things is the closest thing to high speed running anywhere. It's the closest thing. So, and one of the things that we my coach used to do with us as well in the early days was he got us to jump onto a lot of implements. We would jump on a box, but the good thing about it, he wouldn't let us jump down. He would just say jump up. So we take the forced landing out of it all the time. So you push up and land, and you push up and land again. And it doesn't have to be a huge box. It's just something that teaches them how to use, triple extension early. It's just a small value. With both hands, you can do double shift or you can do single shift hand. Just teaching them little things, really, really early. And then for them, especially when you're bringing in things like, types of stretching that you want to do in those areas, just pointing out key muscles for them that they use along that continuum. This is what going to get you this version for understanding what hamstrings are, what are the hamstrings, biceps femoris, that type of thing. You know which one it is, and then when you do your stretch, how is that affecting it? And then they will then feed back to me, oh, it's really, really tight, or it's not so tight. Glutes. Because one of the things that you hear a lot of people always talking about, oh, my glutes ain't firing, they ain't firing, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh my gosh, how are you moving from A to B if you're not firing? I don't understand that. So it's just the coach already knows these things. Like if he's done his studies, because for us, we're continually learning and we always continue developing as coaches. And and every time, I think what I find more intriguing is that every time I bring a youngster into the system, they challenge me even more because it comes with different things. And again, I am continually learning and developing, and I want them to be continually learning and developing all the time. And for me, coaches can't be silent. We don't want to overcoach, and obviously we don't want to keep bombarding them that they're not feeding back information to us. But I think there gets a time when it's almost they're learning to train, so then they are bombarded, and then once they get into the middle of it, once they start to pick it up, then they actually start to learn for themselves, and then you don't have to bombard as much. You don't have to. You can just sort of sit back, and then you can ask specific questions, because why are you asking them specific questions about a muscle or a warm-up system when they don't know? They don't have that knowledge already. So, for us, we then always having to do, put these little things in place so we get the right response from the athlete. And that's why you have to know your stuff all the way through their development, and getting them to understand the numbers as well. I think people have moved away from that. If I've got a 17-year-old and I ask him to, and it's a female, and I said I run a 150 in 19-20 seconds, then through the learning development, they must understand what that means and what type of where the energy systems we are, and what's that's doing to them. How is it taxing them? How much recovery do they need off of that type of thing? And then how we can do it in form of a hypertrophy. We can do that session in the form of a hypertrophy session. And we drop the time so the time might need to be 22, 23. We drop it down, and so we can have repeat processes, and they're understanding the type of development they're getting from it. Is that too much? Because I tend to go on sometimes. So just making sure that all these things are covered. So again, going back to the idea of the movement, then we will then start bringing in small little plyometric single leg hops, double leg hops, and very, very, very low, very low things that you can do. You can get the 6-inch hurdles, or then you can get the 1 foot inch hurdles, the 1 foot hurdles. We do the same thing. We take it as simple as it needs to be, or we take it as hard as it needs to be, because what you're going to get from the batch as well is the people who learn fast and the people who learn slow. And something I learned from a very famous coach, Bobby Kurtzy, and he said to me one day, he said, listen, if they don't learn it, where are they going? You need to get them to learn all those bits first before they move to the next stage. Because what someone will teach them and teach them and teach them, and because the other 4 is moved on, Joe Bloggs is still back here, can't get over he can't do a single leg hop over 1 hurdle, but yet you're pushing him up to compete with the guys who's already doing that. Unless you're specifically aware of his needs, and you can work it out how far behind he is, and you can still keep monitoring, because the problem that happens in that area is that for youngsters moving on too fast, you're developing other skills because they're compensating, and how we can make sure that they actually learn their trade before they move on to the next level is so important. One other thing,
Clarence, a wealth of experience, a wealth of insights there, and it just seems to me, with your experiences with this playground to podium pathway is movement patterns, and then the technical model, and then bringing the athletes to understand and relate their movement to time. And I really like that approach there, because I think sometimes coaches were too quick to bring in the stopwatch and the time before the athletes even know how to move. And then you wonder to ask yourself, what exactly are you measuring, really? So anyway, just to wind up there, it seems to me, in this perspective of playground to podium, teaching, or the ability to teach, is such a key skill by the coach that they should have. Did I hear you right there, Clarence?
Yeah, because I think if I go back to, I just reference other coaches that I've worked with in the past, and one of the things, I don't even know if I pronounce this right, but one of the things he said to me is that, do I understand what pedagogy means, and its relationship to what I'm doing, and at the end of the day, because we might not have done, a teaching degree or whatever, but, we stand there in front of a group of kids every day, convincing them of certain things all the time, and expecting them to be at an elite level or thereabouts, or get the best they can out of themselves. And, we first must understand that that's what we're doing. And, and the ability, if I go back to my forces background, to simplify things and break things down in our environment, for instance, we have a learning environment of about 20 minutes. You learn something for 20 minutes, then somebody will send you out the room, go and have a little walk, come back in again for another. And, you actually understand how people learn, because people, their minds switch off after 5 or 10, 15 seconds. And then, it comes back again, and it switches off and it comes back again. So, but by the time you've done 20 minutes, most of them are bored. So the idea is that it's, that idea to understand how people learn. That's what I think I said in the beginning. This is also an educational journey, because we are teaching some really, really strong facts and figures. We're teaching nutrition, we're teaching, psychology, physiology. And most of the time, that is in one person, you. And then now, with the advent of sports science and psychology, you can do all these things separately. But again, that's a cost. And the professionalism, once people go up the ladder, then those things tend to come to them, or they were going to do it for themselves. But when we're dealing with youngsters and we're trying to develop those aspects of their development as well, the psychology of their performances and things like that, we really need to understand and have a little smidgen of all of those little elements all the time within the athletes.
Clarence, I'll tell you what, Matt, we need Playground to Podium Part 2. I think that one we should have, because we just ran out of time tonight. I tell you what's left of me is to say thank you very much for your time to start with, but also for the passion for you to want to share, your experiences, with our viewers, coaches and athletes, combined, as it were. So I'd like to thank you very much for being able to do that. And like I said, you and I should make a date for Playground to Podium Part 2, because I think there's still plenty in that tank that we can get out of there and enrich the running community. So from me, Clarice.
Okay, bye-bye, and apologize for the interruptions, and hopefully next time I'll be more prepared in that way.
That's all right, man. That's all right, man. Everybody understands the technology. Things can go wrong with the text. I mean, Absolutely. Look, we as humans do get it wrong for ourselves. How much more these gadgets?
Yeah, yeah, they do test us.
Indeed. Listen, let's call it a night, and